Girls, today we shall continue with our English syllabus, and today I shall teach you the first poem of the poetry section, that is composed upon Westminster Bridge. And this poem has been written by William Wordsworth. So now first I will give you a brief account of this great poet of all times in English literature. Let us see. William Wordsworth was an English romantic poet who with Samuel Taylor Coleridge helped to launch the Romantic Age in English literature with their joint publication Lyrical Ballads in 1798. He is remembered as a poet of spiritual and epistemological speculation, a poet concerned with the human relationship to nature. The son of John and Anne Cookson Wordsworth, William was born on 7th April 1770 at Cockermouth, United Kingdom. Wordsworth made his debut as a writer in 1787 when he published a sonnet in the European magazine. During his visit to France in 1791, in the month of November, he fell in love with a French woman, Anne Vallon, who in 1792 gave birth to their daughter Caroline. Due to some problems, he was forced to return to England and could not marry Anne. However, he supported her and his daughter as best he could in later life. Later, he married Mary Hutchinson, a childhood friend. His most famous work, The Prelude, is considered by many to be the crowning achievement of English Romanticism. He is known for his remarkable works. His poems like An Evening Walk, written in 1793, Borders, written in 1795, Lyrical Ballads, 1798, Upon Westminster Bridge, 1801, Intimations of Immortality, 1806, and many more are worth mentioning. He has written some prose works too. He can be called the father of nature poetry. Devastated by the death of his daughter Dora in 1847, he seemingly lost his will to compose poems. He died at Rydalmount in England on April 23rd, 1850. Now, this was, girls, the brief account of the poet of this poem that we are about to read and understand whatever he has written and his feelings about the Westminster Bridge and primarily London as a whole. Okay, so now I shall give you the introduction to the poem. All right, let us see. Wordsworth chose for the subject of his poems the serene setting and the rustic folk because in that condition the essential passions of the heart find a better soil in which they can attain their maturity, are less under restraint, and speak a plainer and more emphatic language. So I hope you understand the feeling and emotions of this great, one of the greatest poets of all times. The prescribed poem Upon Westminster Bridge reveals the pristine beauty of the city of London. The poem, although written in 1802, was published in 1808. The context is Wordsworth's visit to his former French mistress Anne Vallon and their daughter Caroline. His sister Dorothy accompanied him during the meeting. Time and space had altered relationships. The primary purpose of the visit was to arrive at a decision regarding Caroline's future. As they travelled by coach to the ship dock, their brief stint at the Westminster Bridge enthralled Wordsworth, as he was wonder-struck at the glory of London at the crack of dawn. This is our nature poet as I said, the father of nature poetry, William Wordsworth. And this is, as you well understand by the picture, this is the photo of the London city along with the Thames River, and this is the name of the poem we are concerned about, composed on Westminster Bridge by William Wordsworth. This is the photograph of Dorothy Wordsworth, sister of William Wordsworth, who also accompanied Wordsworth on his visit. And he was standing beside Wordsworth on that bridge, and she also looked at the city of London at the crack of dawn, and both of them were enthralled and very much overjoyed. This is the exact photograph of the London Bridge, Westminster Bridge. Now girls, I would like to tell you something about sonnets, okay? Because this poem is a sonnet, as you perhaps know. And a sonnet is a brief or a short poem of 14 lines, okay? Only 14 lines. So a poem consisting of 14 lines can be very easily called a sonnet. But in English literature, sonnets can be divided into many types, okay? So they can be Petrarchan sonnet, there can be Italian sonnet, they can be Shakespearean sonnets, okay? So now this poem which we are concerned about here is a Petrarchan sonnet. Now I will tell you what a Petrarchan sonnet is. The Petrarchan sonnet is a sonnet form not developed by Petrarch himself, but rather by a string of Renaissance poets. The rhyme scheme for the octave is typically ABBA, ABBA. The sestet is more flexible. Petrarch typically used CDE, CDE or CD, CD, CD for the sestet. Now you must be wondering what an octave is and what is a sestet. These are perhaps the new terms for you. I will tell you. This poem is also divided into two parts. Octave, that means the first 8 lines is called octave, and sestet, the later part of the poem, means the 6 next lines of the poem. And the octave follows the same rhyme scheme, ABBA, ABBA. The sestet follows CD, CD, CD. While going through the poem, I will make you understand what is the proper rhyme scheme and how we are getting this rhyme scheme ABBA, ABBA and CD, CD, CD. Okay. Now this poem can be classified under his momentary poems, another very important term in relation with this poem, because momentary poems, as it is suggested by the name itself, it is born out of a specific moment in the poem. London is apostrophized as a fair lady and the sonnet is dedicated to her magnificence. Okay, so now let us move on to the summarized note of the octave and sestet. Then we shall move into the detailed explanation of the poem. Okay girls, let us start with the octave, means the first 8 lines. The earth has not to show anything more fair. The phrase to show has the meaning to showcase. Besides, it also possesses the meaning to boast of. The aesthetic nature of the same is so captivating that even an ordinary being could not pass untouched by the same, unless he was dull. For even those without an inherent taste for beauty could fathom this opulence. The sight is not only beautiful, but also majestic. This word is very important. It is not only aesthetically inspiring, but emotionally touching also. The organic beauty of nature is foregrounded in a commercial city. The garment that the city wears seems to come across as pure as its birthday suit, silent and bare. The poet may also signify the situation of the city at dawn, bare of the populace and signs of industrialization that marred the serenity of the city. The city of London is depicted in all three dimensions as it traverses the fields, the sky, and it shimmers through the smokeless air. So this was about the octave. Now let us move on to the sestet part. The last 6 lines. The sestet marks the change in mood. From sheer contemplation, the poet moves to a mood of declaration. The sun is said to steep or rise in full splendor. The sun is personified. The river is also apostrophized as a person who glides at its own free will. The houses are called sleeping in tranquility. The verb lying functions as a pun here. It has dual implication. The poet asserts that it is lying still, uttering an untruth, as its distinctiveness lies in the serene side of it, without the hustle and bustle of city life. Now let us move on into the poem. I will give you the detailed analysis of the poem, and I hope you will understand. Now, composed upon Westminster Bridge. Okay, this is the poem. Now, as I told you, I will make you understand the rhyme scheme over here. So let us see the last words of each and every line of this poem. Fair, rhymes with where. So if I take fair to be A, then the fourth line will also be A. And if I take by as B, then majesty, Y, will be B also. So we get the rhyme scheme AB, BA. And the next 4 lines also in the same manner. Bare, air. Lie, sky. So we get ABBA, ABBA. Okay? And then we will get in the sestet part steep, deep. Hill, will. Sleep, still. So CD, CD, CD. I hope you understand. You have understood the rhyme scheme. Okay? Now let us move on to the poem itself. Now, earth has not anything to show more fair. Now, the first line, let us understand it. It is a very important line of this poem. While crossing over the Westminster Bridge, the speaker makes a bold statement. He has found the most beautiful scene on the planet. He really means something like, at this particular moment, I can't imagine anywhere being more beautiful than the place I am standing. It's almost more a reflection of his mood than of the outside world. The line ends with a colon, okay, as you have seen, letting us know that he is going to tell us what earth is showing after the line break. Now lines 2 and 3, okay. Dull would he be of soul who could pass by, a sight so touching in its majesty. Instead of trying to describe the scene as we might expect by now, the speaker tries to express how beautiful it is from another angle as well. He justifies his decision to stop his coach along the way to look at the view from the bridge. He says that anyone who didn't stop, who just passed by with a glance, would be dull of soul. The sight from the bridge is touching in its majesty, an intriguing phrase that suggests both intimacy and grandeur. Touching scenes are often small and intimate, like a kid giving flowers to his sick grandmother. Majestic scenes are often large and public, like a snow-covered mountain or a king entering a throne room. The view from Westminster Bridge combines both these elements. He uses anchor, another colon. Maybe now he will stop keeping us in suspense and describe this amazing view. Now lines 4 and 5. This city now doth like a garment wear the beauty of the morning. We learn that time it is London wears the morning like a nice coat or some other piece of clothing. That is garment, okay? These lines hint that maybe the morning, not London itself, is responsible for the stunning quality of the view. Similarly, the word now shows that the beauty depends on the time of day. It's a fleeting, transient beauty. Maybe when the morning is over and London is forced to change clothes, as it were, the speaker would think, oh, now it's just London again. Been there, seen that. Okay? So, now let us go into the lines again, 5 to 7. Silent and bare. See girls, these two words are very, very important terms in this poem. Silent, bare. Ships, towers, domes, theatres and temples lie open unto the fields and to the sky. What does these lines mean? Let us find out. In general terms, the speaker describes some of the sights that are visible from Westminster Bridge. The words silent and bare are positioned in the poem such that they could describe either the morning or the sights. Because of the semicolon before them, the sights are the more obvious choice, but the ambiguity is important. Bare is an interesting word that means naked or unadorned. It contrasts with the image of the city wearing clothing from the line 4 that we have just done. Here, the ships and buildings are nude. From Westminster Bridge in 1802, you could have seen a lot of the highlights of London, including the ships of the River Thames, the dome of the famous St. Paul's Cathedral, designed by the architect Christopher Wren, and the iconic Tower of London. One thing you could not have seen in 1802, but that you could see today, is the Big Ben clock. It wasn't built yet. Despite being all crowded together within one city, the speaker gives an impression of spaciousness. All bright and glittering in the smokeless air. Line 8. The speaker sums up the whole scene at the end of the poem's first chunk of 8 lines called the octave. He focuses on the early morning summer sunlight, which makes the buildings bright and glittering. The word glittering in particular suggests that the scene is not static but rather constantly changing with the shifting light. Our favorite word in the poem is smokeless. What a word! He means that neither the characteristic London fog nor smoke from chimneys obscures the bright light. Now line 9. We have just finished the octave part. Now let us move on to the next section of the poem, that is the sestet, the last 6 lines of the poem. Never did sun more beautifully steep in his first splendor, valley, rock or hill. The speaker returns to his bold claim from the beginning of the poem, that earth has never presented a scene quite so beautiful as this one. Specifically, he compares the morning sunlight falling on the city to the sunlight that might cover more remote parts of the countryside, such as valley, a boulder or mountainous cliff, a rock or a hillside. These sights would have been more familiar to Wordsworth than the scenery of London, who spent most of his life in rural parts of England. such as the picturesque Lake District in the northwest part of the country. First splendor here means morning. Basically, so he is ragging on his hometown, saying even it can't compare with his view of London. This is really amazing. Lines 11 and 12. Never saw I. Beautiful, isn't it? Never saw I. Never felt a calm so deep. The river glideth at his own sweet will. Here, the river is personified. I hope you understand this. Now, personification is a figure of speech in which an inanimate object or an element is given an image of a person. That is personification. The speaker continues on the topic of the greatest scene ever. He describes how the vision of London makes him feel calm, which is perhaps surprising because London is a huge, bustling city. This section of the poem engages in the personification of various elements of the picture, as I just told you. Here, the river is described as a patient person who takes his time and doesn't allow himself to be rushed. He moves according to his own sweet will. And now, the last two lines of the poem. Dear God, the very houses seem asleep, and all that mighty herd is lying still. You would think the speaker couldn't possibly get more excited about this view after declaring it the most beautiful thing on earth. But no, he gets more excited. He cries out to God as if he has just recognized something astonishing but had not noticed before. He personifies the houses as asleep when it's actually the people inside the houses who are sleeping at this early hour. The city looks like one big, peaceful, sleeping body. Shh, don't wake it. He wants us to say this. The heart of this body is lying still for the moment before the city awakens for a new day. The heart probably doesn't refer to anything specific, but rather the city's energy or vitality. The last two lines mark a shift in tone with their two exclamation marks. The tone goes from amazed to really amazed. So this was your poem, girls. I hope you have understood it very well. So while going through the poem, please listen to this session and keep beside you, keep in front of you the poem also. Go through the poem line by line and listen to this session, listen to this class, and then you will be able to understand the poem as a whole and comprehend it very nicely, because this is a very important poem for all of you and a very important one from the poet also. Thank you, and that's all.